I was adopted by my mom and dad, the ones who took care of me since I was little. But sadly, they both passed away in a very bad car accident. Now, I feel like I have no one. My siblings don't treat me like a real brother or sister. They call me the fake one. Then, a huge fight started over who gets what from our parents' stuff. They think I shouldn't get anything because I'm not related by blood. Well, guess what? I'm not giving up easily. Have you ever thought about how different life would be if you were born into a different family? I think about it a lot, especially when my own family makes everything so hard. They've isolated me from the world outside. I don't have friends, and I don't have any family who would stand up for me when things get tough. It's my own family who's making my life so difficult. Let me tell you about my life. My parents adopted me when I was just a baby. We don't have any pictures from that time, but I've always known them as my mom and dad. They loved me so much, and if they could, they would have given me the best life ever. But I have 3 siblings who refuse to accept me as part of the family. To them, I'm an outsider who doesn't deserve to be treated like family because we don't share the same blood. My siblings have treated me terribly for as long as I can remember. The only thing that kept me going was how much my parents loved me. Even though I was the middle child, they never made me feel like I didn't belong. They celebrated every little achievement of mine with such joy and grace that it made me feel special. But my siblings, they've always made me feel like garbage. They never cared about how I was doing or what was going on in my life. Instead, they avoided me like I was contagious or something. Once, when our parents were away for the weekend and we were staying with our grandparents, they did something horrible. While I was asleep, they wrapped me in a blanket and left me outside on the porch in the cold. I woke up shivering and confused, wondering why I was outside. When I asked them about it, they pretended it was just a prank. Instances like these have happened my whole life. When I was younger, they would gang up on me and make me do their chores. They were always bullies, and they still are. There are some people out there who seem to enjoy making others miserable. I remember a time when I was just so fed up with how my siblings treated me that I finally asked them why they treated me so badly. Their response? They said I was pampered too much by our parents, even though I'm adopted, and that someone needed to put me in my place. That's when I realized it was jealousy talking. Sure, Mom and Dad treated me differently, but I always thought it was because they saw how my siblings treated me like an outsider. I thought maybe it was their way of trying to bring the family together and make me feel wanted. But when I tried to explain this to my siblings, they didn't take it well. Instead, they spent the whole week playing pranks on me. That's when I learned to keep my opinions to myself. What bothered me the most was that my parents never took my side, even when I told them what was going on. They never disciplined my siblings or told them to stop. Sure, sometimes they'd give them a glare in public, but most of the time they just ignored it and called it sibling rivalry. High school was the worst. We were all around the same age, so we were in the same grades. But while my siblings hung out together, I was always left alone. I'm a bit of an introvert, so I didn't have many friends. And whenever my siblings saw me sitting alone, they'd either sneer at me or laugh. It wasn't the way siblings should treat each other, but I got used to it. They were bullies, plain and simple. They never did anything outright mean, but they made sure everyone knew I didn't fit into the family. And because our school was small, rumors spread fast. The other students were super judgmental, coming from families with very conservative views. Anything out of the ordinary was a big deal, and I was just tired of it all. But I had to accept it, because that's just how things were. Because my own siblings had the same mindset, they never let me forget that I wasn't really one of them because I didn't share their DNA. But strangely, it didn't bother me as much as they hoped it would. My lack of reaction seemed to annoy them even more. So, they decided to come up with something bigger. One day, I arrived at school to find everyone staring and whispering about me. It was confusing because while people did talk about my strained relationship with my siblings, it had never been this intense. When I got to class, my seatmate told me that my siblings had spread the rumor that I was adopted. Within hours, everyone knew that I wasn't biologically related to my siblings. That day was probably the toughest in my high school experience. People openly discussed my family situation, expressing confusion about why my siblings treated me so poorly. Some didn't care about my adoption and treated me the same as before. But there were many who weren't happy about adoption in general. One classmate asked me directly if the rumor was true, and it hit a nerve. I explained that I'd been with my family since I was a baby, and just because we didn't share the same blood didn't mean they weren't my family. But when my brother, who was in the same class, overheard, he denied it vehemently. It was clear where I stood with him, and the whole school wasn't treating me kindly. I spent the whole week avoiding people in the hallways, only to come home to more of the same. Frustrated beyond measure, I finally confronted my parents. I asked them to contact the adoption agency to either take me back or find my biological parents. Their panicked reaction turned into a big ordeal. My parents lectured my siblings on their behavior, but it only seemed to make them angrier. Mom tried to get them to apologize, but it felt empty. I was determined to find my real parents, so I sneaked into my dad's study to look for clues. Unfortunately, my sister caught me, and her anger was palpable. The tension in our family was still thick from the previous fight, and I didn't want to escalate things further. But the desire to know my true origins was consuming me, leading to more conflicts and secrecy within my own home. When my sister tried to drag me out of the study, I instinctively grabbed her hand to stop her. I wanted to explain that I was searching for information about my biological family because it seemed like nobody in my current family wanted me. But instead of understanding, she took me straight to our parents' room and told them everything. The shock and disappointment on their faces is something I'll never forget. All my life, I've strived to make my parents proud and never give them a reason to be disappointed in me. But that day, I crossed a line. I wanted to be a good daughter, but I also needed to know about my real parents, why I was given up for adoption, and why my siblings didn't like me. Most importantly, why were my parents hiding everything from me? It just didn't make sense. It's been a week since that incident, and my parents are still reeling from it. It caused a huge fight between us because I demanded answers about my past. The more they tried to hide it, the more I wanted to know. Meanwhile, my siblings have become even meaner, especially at school. I've become more of a loner, and the gossip and whispers only fuel my frustration. People at school use my adoption as a way to insult me, like when a guy I accidentally bumped into used it to mock me for something unrelated. These words cut deep, making me feel like even more of an outsider, not just in my family, but everywhere. My parents try to comfort me, saying I'm a missing piece of their family, but I'm not sure if I believe them anymore. It's hard to trust anything when everything feels so uncertain. Update: it's been a few months since the incident. Things have calmed down, and I've agreed not to pursue information about my biological family again. I've realized I need to let go of the past and be grateful for the family I have now. My siblings are still the same, but my parents are cautious about anything related to adoption. They don't want to trigger another episode like before. I attempted to search for my biological family, despite assuring my parents that I wouldn't. But they still seemed unsure. Then, a month ago, my life changed dramatically. My only support, my parents, were gone forever. We received a devastating call from the principal's office at school informing us of their passing in a car crash. Our world shattered, and the cries echoed through the office. Trying to make sense of it was futile. Our parents were our greatest source of happiness and inspiration, and now they were gone. For me, they were the only real family I had. Amidst the grief, my siblings found solace in each other. But for me, there was no one. Instead of support, my siblings made me feel even more isolated. They mocked my tears, reminding me that I cried over fake parents, not real ones. The constant fighting only added to the pain. Things took a darker turn when my siblings decided to exclude me from the family business. Our parents hadn't left a will, so legally, the business belonged to us. But they kicked me out, telling me I had no place there. It was crushing, especially since Dad and I had talked about me taking over the business. Their selfishness led to more fights, as they refused to acknowledge Dad's intentions. Now, 3 years later, life hasn't been easy. My siblings constantly remind me that I'm only part of the family on paper. They exclude me from family activities, and their constant reminders of my outsider status became too much. In my final year of university, I decided to leave. I couldn't bear to hear about how I didn't belong or force myself into a family that didn't want me. I worked hard on my college applications and got accepted to a university far away. Since moving, I haven't had meaningful conversations with my siblings, nor have they made the effort to reach out to me. The distance has brought some peace, but the scars of rejection and isolation still linger. Even though my relationship with my siblings was strained, we still had the basic sibling instinct to ensure each other's well-being. However, they had their reasons for not wanting me to end up like our parents. Part of the inheritance money went to me, and they often tried to convince me to give it to them. Over the years, I watched them spend their share recklessly on parties, drugs, and gambling, without regard for the value of money. I chose not to interfere and focused on my job, using my inheritance to cover my expenses. But this year, I discovered that their spending habits were spiraling out of control, squandering not only their share, but also our parents' hard-earned money. It wasn't what Mom and Dad would have wanted. Despite our strained relationship, I felt compelled to intervene. I texted them, urging them to get their act together. Their response was harsh, reminiscent of how they treated me as a kid, bringing back painful memories. Driven by a mix of personal experiences and media influence, I revisited my search for my biological family. In my dad's study, I stumbled upon a file from an adoption center. Although it didn't mention my name, I assumed it was mine. But when I visited the center, they had no record of me. It left me puzzled about why my parents had that file. Nevertheless, I persisted in my search, hoping to uncover the truth about my origins. Update: another year has passed. I've graduated college, secured a good job, but my quest to find my real family remains unfruitful. Despite months of searching and inquiries, there's still no clue. I was almost ready to give up until someone suggested a DNA test. It was a revelation. I realized I didn't have to exhaust myself trying to trace my adoption records. It's a new lead, and I'm hopeful it will finally provide the answers I've been seeking, that I should stay out of family matters, essentially admitting that they considered me an outsider. Additionally, I had the DNA test results proving that I was the biological child of our parents, while they were adopted. This was crucial evidence in my favor. The court case went in my favor, and I reclaimed what rightfully belonged to me. Seeing my siblings' faces as they realized they were losing everything was immensely satisfying. They were experiencing the same helplessness and uncertainty that I had endured for years because of their mistreatment. But my revenge didn't stop there. I ensured that they faced consequences for their actions. I made sure they understood the pain they had caused me by making their lives equally miserable. It wasn't just about getting back at them, it was about making them understand the depth of their wrongdoing. Now, as I sit back and watch them struggle to rebuild their lives, I feel a sense of justice and closure. They may have thought they could treat me however they pleased, but they were wrong. I've proven that I am not to be underestimated, and I've reclaimed my power and dignity. As for me, I finally have peace knowing that I've stood up for myself and made them face the consequences of their actions. It's a victory that has brought me immense satisfaction and closure. From now on, I'll be living my life on my terms, free from the shackles of their cruelty, It's incredible how the tables turned on my siblings. All along, they believed they were entitled to everything because they were the biological children, while I, the adopted one, was left out. Little did they know that their own biological status would be their downfall. Firstly, their belief in their biological connection to our parents led them to dismiss any possibility of me having a share in the family property. However, their assumption backfired spectacularly when it turned out that they were the ones who weren't biologically related to our parents, while I was. Secondly, when I provided evidence of their adoption and pushed for DNA testing, they were forced to confront the truth. The results confirmed what I already knew. They were adopted, and I was the biological child of our parents. Lastly, I sought support from our grandmother, despite our distant relationship. She understood the injustice I faced and agreed to testify in court, emphasizing the tradition of passing down properties to biological children. Her testimony strengthened my case significantly. Seeing the shock on my siblings' faces as the court ruled in my favor was immensely satisfying. Suddenly, everything they had hoped to inherit was rightfully mine. It was a powerful reminder that karma works its way around. Reflecting on this journey, it's astonishing how my siblings, despite growing up together, never learned to accept me as part of the family. Their jealousy and mistreatment only fueled my determination to seek justice. In the end, their actions led to their own downfall. What's your take on this story? It's a testament to the resilience of individuals facing adversity and a reminder that kindness and acceptance can go a long way.